Good evening and welcome to the final iteration of the 2022 Lift Every Voice lecture series. I'm excited to be here at this point, to be, well, at the conclusion, but I'm particularly excited about tonight's lecture and everything that we have in store for you on this evening. So welcome those of you who are in the Zoom space, but for those who are joining now on the various social media outlets on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, and I'd ask that you would do me a favor and share, like, subscribe, comment, rep your city or your town. Let me know where you're listening in from. And I just want to say welcome to each and every one of you. We're thankful for our sponsors who help to sponsor this event and the various things that we do at the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ to better our community. And so we want to thank Bay State Health. We want to thank the Davis Foundation, also MGM Springfield, and Mass Mutual as well. We start everything out with a word of prayer. Let us bow our heads and pray. Eternal and almighty God, we thank you for your loving kindness, for your tender mercy. Thank you for your manifold blessings. Thank you for the opportunity to share with your people words of empowerment and inspiration that may inspire them to move into action to better their communities, their families, and the world around them, so that we all may enjoy the benefits that you have provided for us. This we ask in your name. Amen and amen. Every lecture, we have a host who guides us through the evening. Today, I happen to know a little bit about the host since I've been married to her for 31 years. It is my own wife, First Lady Cynthia Swan, who is a therapist by trade. She holds 2 master's degrees, and she is a tireless worker in our community, in our church. She is my right arm of support in everything that I do, but you know, she's a leader in her own right, and I'm glad that she is going to be leading us through this evening. So right after we hear a word from Bay State Health, you're going to be in the hands of Cynthia Swan, and I'll be back at some point if she lets me get the mic back.
At Bay State Health, we are compelled to be a force for good. That compassionate, spirited, and steadfast drive has helped us be the difference for you and so many others within our diverse human family. Every day, in ways big and small, we are humbled and privileged that our impactful care helps you go on to make all the difference in your own world. Together, we have the capacity to transform lives.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final installment of the Lift Every Voice Lecture Series 2022. If I was in person, I would be clapping my hands and cheering right now. Tonight, we have our special guest, Brother Etan Thomas. We are so excited to have you all with us and joining us tonight for this divine conversation that I'm sure is going to take place between these 2 powerful Black men who are also activists in our community. This year has been a very thought-provoking and inspirational season as we started out with comedian extraordinaire Ada Rodriguez, as we laughed and we cried. And then we were intellectually incited by Dr. Aubrey Hendricks as we thought and we cried. And tonight, I'm not sure, but I anticipate that all of our senses will be pricked once again to help us unite in lifting our voices in the fight for justice and liberation. I also would like to thank all of our previous and tonight's program participants, as well as our committee members and Focus Springfield. So without any further ado, as my husband used to say, I haven't heard him say it recently, put on your seatbelts and let's get ready to ride. So first up on the program is the Black National Anthem. Always have to decompress and process a little bit more after I sing the words to the Black National Anthem. I grew up in the South, so we used to sing that song every morning, and sometimes get me a little emotional when I think about the fact that my children are coming up in school systems where they don't get to sing that song every morning. But I thank God for the Black National Anthem. Very, very, very excited about this next part of the program. She is a native of the city of Springfield. She's always very powerful, always very thoughtful. Our spoken word presenter tonight is Springfield's own Miss Crystal Center Brown.
You could be a celebrity, living in a life of luxury, or you could bloom right where you stand, humbly and quietly. You could walk the red carpet with paparazzi swarming all around, or You could plant seeds in your own communities, willing and fertile ground. You could be a celebrity. You could spend summers in luxurious destinations with palm trees as far as the eye can see, or you can take stock of the beauty that we can find right on State Street. You could be a celebrity. That tiny screen that seems to mean so much is why many of us feel so out of touch. Instead of sitting across from each other knee to knee, we are too busy texting and taking selfies. You could be a celebrity. But I challenge you to reconnect with our roots with real conversation and spoken truths, real life hugs and heart-to-hearts, communicating with our minds, beginning where we start. Your community needs you, and you could be a celebrity, but God gave us each other. He made us whole and free, so I encourage you to join me to regain and rejoin our community. You could be a celebrity, or you could bloom right in your community.
I think we're supposed to do the snaps. I think we're supposed to do the snaps, you know, when we hear a presentation, right, that inspires us, right? We want to thank God for that presentation. What can I say? What can I say? I just got to give it some snaps. Just got to give it some snaps. So thank you, Ms. Crystal, for that. Right now, we want to prepare our hearts and minds to receive from, I think she's the city's sister or the city's daughter. And we call her the voice. We call her the voice here in the city of Springfield. She's a staple in our community. It's none other than the incomparable, my sister, your daughter, your friend, Vanessa Ford.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Even virtually, we can connect with each other and lift our hands. We will walk hand in hand. Yes, we'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. Someday. Overcome, yes. We'll walk hand in hand and we'll live in peace. Yes, we shall overcome someday.
over here, my heart is just bursting out of my chest right now. Thank goodness for Vanessa Ford. I'm just telling you, it seems like all the spirits of our ancestors and our community is just flows out of her every time she sings. So we want to thank God for her. We want to thank God for her voice. She really is lived every voice personified. So we thank God for her. I love that lady. I love my sister. Now I get to show off some of my first lady prowess by showing everyone how to turn the mic back over to a bishop. So at this time, I want to turn the mic back over to my husband and the bishop, Bishop Talbert W. Swan II. How you doing, Sister Denise, my sister and my friend?
All right, thank you, First Lady Swan, who doesn't turn the mic over to me very often, so I just take advantage of it when she does. But once again, we want to welcome each and every one of you who have come on this evening. Those of you who are in the Zoom space, and I'm looking now, I see on two different pages on Facebook. We've got 300 on one page, another 300 on another. And then I'm looking on Instagram. Instagram, we've got a couple hundred folks on Instagram as well. And we've got folks on, well, we've got almost 400 people on Instagram. So that's our mega church tonight, the Instagram Church of God in Christ. And then we've got YouTube popping as well. So good evening to each and every one of you that are chimed in from wherever you're chiming in from across social media. It's during this time, I always tell people if we were in person, I tell them that we would have it at the Spring of Hope Church, and I would tell them that you came to a Black church tonight, and you should have known that you couldn't come to a Black church without them asking for an offering. And y'all would be saying amen right now. I'd hear you saying amen. And then I'd ask you all to share a $20 gift and to share it through electronic means. You can give it through the Cash App. Our cash tag is $ Spring of Hope, $ Spring of Hope. You can give it through the Givelify app. You can search for Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ, Springfield, Massachusetts. You can give through the PayPal app. You can go to our website, 413hope.org. That's 413hope.org, and click the online giving link. I'm going to ask Ayana or one of the those on the planning committee to put the cash tag in the comment section in the chat, and someone who is watching on social media to put it there as well. The cash tag, once again, is $ Spring of Hope. Whatever your gifts are, we appreciate it, and we thank you so much for your continued support of this ministry. And so I'm back out the way and give you back into the hands of First Lady.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, babe. If y'all are ready and can take just a little bit more, the voice is returning with another selection as we get closer to the main attraction tonight. Again, the phenomenal Miss Vanessa Ford.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gonna walk it out and move mountains. We're gonna walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. Yes, I'll rise up, high like the wave. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains. We'll bring it to its feet and move mountains. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. I'll rise up, high like the wave. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need is hope. So let's rise up, rise like the day. Let's rise up, rise unafraid. Let's rise up, even if we have to do it 1,000 times again. Let's rise up, rise up, rise up. Come on and rise, rise, rise. Let's rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Let's rise up, rise like the day. Let's rise up.
I know, I feel y'all, right? It's time to get up. It's time to rise up. Let's rise every day. Let's rise every day. I'm telling y'all, it's time to get up. And I will do it 1,000 times in a day for you. I will do it 1,000 times in a day for you. Oh my God, I'm so moved right now. We got to hurry up and get to the main attraction. We do have one more presentation that we got to get to tonight. It's actually from my favorite dance school in the city, Youthful Expression. They also teach my favorite dancers in the city, my daughter and my granddaughter. So at this time, Youthful Expressions.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new world. Far across the river, I hear freedom calling, calling me to answer. Gotta keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you.
I don't know how much more we're gonna be able to take before we all just laid out, prostrate before these monitors. Always, always, always am I inspired when the arts so eloquently expresses both our pain and our power. So thank you again, Youthful Expressions, for your fantastic presentation on tonight. So this is the end of my job on tonight. At this time, I'm going to get ready to turn it once again over into the hands of our founder and creator of the Lift Every Voice lecture series, my husband, Bishop Tara W. Swan II.
Thank you, First Lady Cynthia Swan. Appreciate your guiding us on this evening and your jubilant, energetic mastering of these ceremonies. Thank you so very, very much. Listen, I'm so excited about our lecture on tonight. It's the last one of the season, but I think it's going to be extremely powerful. Not only the lecture, but the presentation that we have after the lecture as well. Very special presentation. Normally we would do an award presentation, but we've got something different tonight. So stay tuned for that. Etan Thomas is an 11-year NBA veteran. He's also a lifelong advocate for social justice, a published poet and author, a freelance writer and activist, a motivational speaker, co-host of a sports talk show on ESPN. He's also an active church member, First Baptist Church, involved in facilitating youth forums and coaching young people at his church. He was also very involved in several of our social issues, and an anti-war activist, speaking out vociferously in various protests and other venues. He's written blogs for the Huffington Post, and he's been an advocate against police brutality and against injustice. It is his latest book that we're going to touch on tonight. His latest book is entitled Police Brutality and White Supremacy, The Fight Against American Traditions. It's a series of conversations and insights that features his original interviews with persons like Chuck D, Jake Tapper, Jamel Hill, Tim Wise, Rex Chapman, Mark Lamont Hill, Isaiah Thomas. And I was blessed as well to be interviewed by him and be a part of this book. If you don't have a copy of it, you need to get a copy of it. Police Brutality and White Supremacy, The Fight Against American Traditions. You need to get it. And you see what he did right there with the Huey P. Newton remake. So you need to get a copy of it. We're going to be discussing parts of this tonight. The New York Times was quoted as saying this: before Kaepernick, there was Etan Thomas. And so I want Brendan to bring on the screen now our guest tonight, Etan Thomas. Welcome.
Thank you, Bishop Swan. I appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this lecture series and for being a part of my book and everything that you do to continue to fight for justice. So I definitely appreciate you.
All right. Great to have you tonight. I want to do this. I want to ask you about 3 questions about you personally first to kind of set the stage. And then I've got some questions about what's in your book on tonight. One of the things that always shapes us is our past, our childhood, our past, our family upbringing, all of that kind of helps to shape the people that we become. You had an incident when you were in high school, where you were humiliated by police officers. How did that experience help to shape the advocate that you became?
Oh, well, that pretty much pushed me to find my voice. I was a sophomore in high school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, driving to a basketball game. You know, I played basketball, and I was stopped by the police. So one of the things that used to happen, you know, back in the 90s is whenever a young Black man is stopped by the police, the first thing they would make you do is get out of your car and sit on the ground. That was just kind of routine. So, you know, they stopped me. It was a busy intersection and I'm sitting on the ground, and then, you know, one backup comes and another backup comes. So there's three cars, you know, 6 police officers all flashing their lights and me sitting on the ground. So it's a really intense situation. I remember I'm like 16 years old right now. And so I'm sitting there and I'm hearing them talking, and they're like, no, he looks familiar. Keep searching, search his plates. Did you run it again? Run it one more time. He looks familiar. I know we've seen him before. So they kept this going on for a long time. Now there was one police officer that was standing a little bit, you know, to the side, and he just had his hand like next to his holster, waiting for me to make any kind of move. Like I could see that that's what was going on. So I'm sitting there, you know, scared and, you know, 16-year-old kid, and I'm listening to them go back and forth and, you know, everything like that. This goes on for like 45 minutes, right? So then they asked me to pop the trunk of my car. And I said, wait a minute, don't you need a warrant or something for that? And the way they all turned and looked at me, I literally jumped, you know? And I was like, okay, go ahead. Like, you know what I mean? And so they opened my trunk, they pulled up my Booker T. Washington High School duffel bag, and they said, oh, he plays basketball for Booker T. That's where we know him from. It was like, all right, we're going to have about your business. And they patted me on my back and said, stay out of trouble. And that was it. And I was like, wait a minute. You know, I'm thinking to myself, so no apology, no, I'm sorry we humiliated you in this busy street in front of everybody. So I was late to my game, and the next day I'm sitting there in class, in speech and debate class, and I'm fuming, like talking about it to the girl who's sitting next to me. I was like, yeah, they did this to me because I'm Black, and they had me on the ground and all this different stuff. And my speech teacher, Mr. Bland, never forget it. He tapped me on the shoulder, told me to come, you know, into this little office that he has. And he said, I've been listening to you talk about what happened to you. Make that your original oratory for this upcoming speech tournaments. And I was like, you know, I'm not really thinking about no speech right now. You know, I didn't even want to come to school today. I just had one of the mamas that, you know what I mean? You're going to go to school unless something was falling off. But I didn't even want to come to school that day. But he said, no, people will listen to you and they'll hear you, especially because you play basketball. So I did it. I wrote about it, wrote about the incident, wrote about perceptions, police, how they treat everything like that. And I started, you know, performing it around Tulsa for speech and debate tournaments. And I started getting a lot of attention for it and winning a lot of tournaments and raising a lot of eyebrows. And the media wrote about it, and the Tulsa World wrote about it and everything like that. And so I got a letter from the Tulsa Police Department saying that they were going to look into the situation. Now, I don't know whatever came from that, but for a 16-year-old kid, that just for them to acknowledge it was big. So different people throughout the community were coming up to me and saying, hey, thank you for saying that. You know what I mean? And for speaking about this. We saw you on the news, we saw the newspaper, we saw everything. Thank you, because it happens all the time, but they won't listen to us, but they'll hear you. And that was like the aha moment. I was like, oh, so just because I play basketball, they'll hear me if I'm talking about this. So that kind of thrusted me into using my voice and my platform to speak about injustice. And I just kind of kept doing it from that point up until.
So that's interesting, because you talk about how they would listen to you because you played basketball. Now, fast forward to contemporary times, and we see Colin Kaepernick step out in the NFL, and we see people like LeBron James and others lifting their voice in the NFL. And then there's this conventional wisdom that professional athletes, they should simply play ball and not be involved in social issues, that they ought to be happy to be multimillionaires up on this great stage and being afforded all of these blessings. And so it's the proverbial shut up and dribble, like Laura Ingraham, said about LeBron James. But you were actively speaking out against war and engaged in social issues while you were still active in the NBA. How did that affect your standing in the league and your relationship with your teammates? Because we see kind of a different paradigm today where people frown on professional athletes using their voice like you used yours when you were a teenager.
Well, I had definitely had people that disagreed with me. It was funny because I played with Michael Jordan when he came back for the Washington Wizards. And so every day, this is you can tell I'm be dating myself by this story, but every day he would get these big boxes of fan letters, like these big boxes every single day, and I would get like a letter or two, maybe somebody from Syracuse that saw me playing college or something like that, but it was Michael Jordan who really got the majority of the big boxes. So I remember when I started speaking out against the war in Iraq in particular. And, that was a time, like right now, if you ask anybody, even Republicans, they're like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea. But think about back then, right after 9/11, and Bush was like, they are the enemy, and this happened because of them. And we have to now go, you know what I mean? And he made that type of a distinction. Wasn't a lot of people speaking out against the war, like athletes or entertainers. It was like,
right.
Michael Moore, the Dixie Chicks, and like two other people, you know what I mean? So when I spoke out, it was a big thing. So then I started getting big boxes of letters delivered.
Wow. Different kind though, huh?
Yeah, but it was it was both hate mail and people saying, thank you for doing what you're doing. So I got a lot of ungrateful athlete, go back to Africa, if you don't like America, leave, like all of that type of mail. And it was like shocking because I didn't expect to get that strong of a feedback from so many people. But that's what I really saw, that people get very upset when you say something that they disagree with.
Now there are a lot of folks who have criticized athletes and celebrities for not doing enough when it comes to using their considerable resources and influence to affect change. You, of course, not wanting any credit, were actively using your resources and your influence for various causes, notably a large donation that you made to the Haiti relief effort and other things. How important is it for those of that stature to demonstrate by example what it means to get involved?
Well, as far as the different, and charity work is a little bit different. I kind of like to put them in a different category when you're talking about fighting for justice and then charity. You know what I mean? Because those are kind of two different things, both very important, but two different things. Sometimes people like to, conflate the two, and they say, okay, a person is using their voice, but it's different because it's charity. So for Haiti, that's just what somebody with half a heart should do. They had a big devastating, I think it was an earthquake, and all these different stuff happened, and the refugees were trying to come in, and America was pushing them back. It's not like they were treating them like the, you know what I mean, Ukrainian refugees.
Right.
They were pushing them back after a major earthquake that they had no, you know, it wasn't a fault of their own. So I saw that, and I was bothered by it. I mean, I remember after Hurricane Ivan hit Grenada, my family's from Grenada. And I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm blessed to play the NBA and everything like that. I had the means. I want to go and help the people. So that was one thing that for me, you know, I just felt obligated to have to do it. Now, when you're talking about athletes using their voices and their platforms, you know, I always say that, you know, you have a tremendous opportunity to do that. I can't say that it's an obligation because it's not everybody's ministry. You know, some people get up there and say the wrong thing and they make things worse. If you're not passionate, because once you step out there, you're going to be attacked from every single angle, and you got to be willing to stand up, fight off the attacks, hold your position, you know, go into almost like a speech and debate mode, tell them where they're wrong, because the first thing they're going to do is try to discredit you and make you look like you don't know what you're talking about. Right. So I would say that if you're not ready or prepared to do that, then maybe you should kind of just stay in the background. But if you are, I would definitely say it's a huge opportunity for every athlete, because you have a tremendous level of influence and a tremendous platform.
Absolutely. So let me turn to the book. Once again, you all, it's Police Brutality and White Supremacy, the Fight Against American Traditions. Anywhere where you purchase books, you can get a copy of this. In the book, you cover a lot of ground, and it's going to be way too much for us to get to tonight. Right. You deal with Rodney King, the Central Park Five, George Floyd, defunding the police, Black women in police, the January 6th insurrection, white privilege, whitewashed Christianity, and more. So I'm going to deal with three particular issues and ask you three questions based on these areas in the book. First of all, you dealt with the experience of Black women and the police, and you interviewed some who had direct experiences, like Takesia Clemens and others, direct experiences with the police. But then you also interviewed what you call the sisters of the movement. You interviewed the sisters of Both and John, Tatiana Jefferson, and Sean Monterosa, because the focus of police brutality has been so heavily on the experiences of Black men. How important was it for you to highlight the direct experiences of Black women and also chime into the experiences of those who were affected by the indirect experiences of their loved ones? Well,
you know, it was, you know, those were the most difficult interviews that I've ever done, talking to the impacted family members and victims of police brutality, like Takesia Clemens. Like, the police literally beat her up at a Waffle House, and it's a horrible. You know, when she's explaining it and talking about everything that happened, how she was fighting for justice and how she never received that justice. She never did. The police officer was never, you know, any type of repercussions or anything like that. And you look at the video of how she was treated. And then, you know, of course, whenever something like that happens, as Black parents, the first thing we do is go and check with our kids and, you know, have the talk with them over again and tell them that but it's so, you know, I sat down and watched, I showed my daughter that interview when I did it, and then she wanted to research more and look about the case, and she was so frustrated by you know, how could somebody treat someone like that and have no regard for them, you know, and there's just inhumane treatment. But then how could so many people justify that that is what the police should have done? So she's asking me all of these questions, and it's tough because, you know, we as Black parents have to have this conversation with our children. And I talked about my children a lot. I mean, my wife's children. I always got to correct myself, not my children, my wife's children. I didn't have no children, but our children all the time about these because we have to prepare them for a world that will treat them like this on the regular. Like I just posted today about a situation that happened in Syracuse.
I saw. So I went to 10-year-old boy.
10-year-old boy,
yeah.
Because of a bag of chips. The way that they were treating him, the way they snatched him up, and you hear the child like screaming, and they threw him into the car. This big traumatic situation. He's gonna have nightmares for the rest of his life for that. He's 10 years old. He's the age of my baby girl, and I'm like, and then again, you're looking at the comment section and seeing people say, well, he did break the law by stealing chips. I was like, are y'all serious? Would you say that about y'all little white babies if they went to the store and did something like that? You would say that that's what they deserve? And it's just a lack of humanity. So that's the part where, interviewing these impacted family members, interviewing these different people, for some people, it shows a human side to the hashtag that they're aware of. You hear the hashtag, you see the trending topic, people, start to debate about the merits and, what the police did wrong and what the person should have done, everything like that, but they missed the human part, that this was an actual human being. And so talking to the impacted family members, and they're saying how, their loved one is no longer on this earth. They can't go and hug their loved one after this. They, after the topic is not trending anymore and everybody moves to the next topic, they're still left without their loved one, trying to put the pieces back together of their lives. So it was an important part to add so many of those family members in it because their voices are so often missing from this discussion. It's a discussion about topics and merits and everything like that, but these are the people who are really affected the most from it. So that's why I really wanted to include their voices in this book.
Yeah, and an awesome job in terms of giving voices to Black women who are many times, the ones who are really holding it together for the Black family in general. And even when police brutality affects Black men, it's oftentimes the Black women who are holding those families together and out there supporting the efforts for justice for those Black men who are been mistreated. Right. Now you're a Baptist. One of my Baptist preacher friends tells a story. He said his grandmother was asked a question and said, if you hadn't been a Baptist, what would you be? And she said, well, I'd be ashamed of myself. But in any case, you're a Baptist church member, active in your church, and you deal in your book, you talk about what you call whitewashed Christianity. I've got a saying that white evangelicalism is nothing but white supremacy in drag. You talk to Steph Curry, who's a known Christian superstar in the NBA, about how fellow Christian players support each other in the league. As a believer, talk about the dichotomy of the Christianity that you ascribe to and the form of religion that white evangelicals ascribe to, which is something that seems to be totally different altogether.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I interviewed you for that chapter as well. And also Chris Broussard from ESPN, if everybody knows who he is. And we all talked about seeing that hypocrisy. Steph Curry talked about seeing why he could not support Trump. He talked about it. He said, people were all saying, well, why wouldn't you go to the White House? He said, because I can't support who's in the White House. And he was like, as a Christian, I cannot support him because and he said, it's not a matter of judging someone, and he made that point clear. He's like, but none of the things that he professes, even that he's not even trying to be Christ-like. He's doing the exact opposite. So how could I, as a Christian, support him? And I thought that was a strong statement for him to make. But yeah, talking about the history of Christianity and the history of the way that Christianity was used to push the white supremacy, it was used to justify slavery. Right now, It's so interesting. I just posted this yesterday. What's today? Tuesday. Yesterday. It was so interesting seeing so many evangelicals, posting Happy Easter and everything like that. And then the next day, they went right back to trying to justify why a black man was shot in the back of the head by the police. The next day, it was like, you know what I mean? Like the very next day, they went right back to that. And I was just like, wow, that's not Christ-like. That's not what it's important to really give that distinction, because one of the things that you said in the interview that I thought was really important is that those are not good representations of Christianity. So you have a whole group of people that say, they look at the white evangelicals and say, see, that's why I can't mess with Christianity, because of them people. I'm like, well, no. Those are not people who are following what they're supposed to be following. They're not following the scripture. They're not following the teachings of Jesus. They are twisting it and turning it and making it conform to what they already believe. And they're twisting scripture. I mean, they used the Bible to justify slavery.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to be able to justify something, you just say, God told me to do it, and that's what they did do. So, but don't confuse that with what Christianity is supposed to be. And I'm glad you made that point, because that always comes back up. And then I'm glad Chris Broussard went back and said, well, wait a minute now, people always say, well, Christianity is the white man's religion. And, and I understand why they get there, but then you have to educate them to be able to say, well, Christianity was in Africa far before slavery.
Yes.
The ancient Coptic, you have to go back. And so that's providing all of the actual evidence and the education behind someone saying that it's just simply the white man's religion. Now, American slavery, the white man used Christianity, twisted it, and made Jesus white, made all the angels, all of that definitely happened. But there was Christianity before that. And that's a really distinction that you have to be able to make. So now with the white evangelicals, that's why I love how you continue to call them out. And I wish, and every time I quote you or retweet something that you say or something like that, I say we need more black pastors to talk like this. We need white pastors who claim that this is not what you subscribe to. You should be calling this out as well. But you hear a silence.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your willingness to continuously call out the racism and evil and hatred of white evangelicals in particular.
Yeah. Bishop Daughtry said this. She said to white so-called Christian politicians, we don't need you to come to black churches and talk about racism. We need you to go to white churches and talk about it. But you hit the nail on the head. The oldest Christian church in the world is the Ethiopian Coptic Church. It started in the cradle of Africa, and simply because it was bastardized and whitenized in America to try to make our ancestors more palatable tools of service doesn't mean it's an accurate representation of what Christianity ought to be. Let me say to those of you who are viewing on social media and who are in the Zoom, if you've got a question, because we're going to open it up. I've got one more question for Brother Thomas, and I want to open it up to get at least a couple of questions from the audience. So please start putting your questions in the chat section or write them onto social media, and we'll have one of our team members pull those questions from social media. One of the questions that you asked, and I loved your interview with Jamel Hill, who's a fellow sports, journalist who got in trouble for calling Trump a racist, and of course she was absolutely right. But you were discussing with her about the January 6th insurrection, and you said that Trump basically built his entire platform on racism. And had no qualifications to be president. And you asked her the question, what did it say about where we are in society when someone can actually get to the White House when the only platform they had to run on was racism. In the title of your book, it says the fight against American traditions. Are you suggesting that racism, police brutality, white supremacy are the traditions that you're speaking about?
No, definitely. I mean, we go through the police departments, the way that police were even formulated during slavery. It was supposed to be for slave patrol. You know, their whole goal and their whole mission was to, you know, they caught a slave reading, or if a slave, enslaved person, escaped, ran away, their job was to bring them back to the slave master. I mean, the whole formulation of police departments, that's what it was rooted in. That's how it began. When you're talking about as far as this country, you know, it's so interesting when you always hear, and I used to question this when I was younger too. I had at least sense to say, wait a minute, you keep saying this is a Christian nation and everything like that, but everything that you came here and slaughtered the Native Americans who are already here living peacefully amongst themselves. Like, what's Christian about that? You know what I mean? And then you brought people from another country to as slaves. Like, again, how is this root? Where is the Christianity that you're saying that this country is rooted in? And so, yes, that's definitely, there's the history. When Trump said "Make America Great Again," you know, what America was he talking about? What America possibly could he have been talking about? It's not that old of a nation. So you go back to what? Slavery? Go back to segregation? Go back to what part of, you know, the timeline is he talking about? And so it says a lot when that can be your only qualification and it works. So remember, after Obama, we were supposed to be in post-racial America. That's what they kept saying. So Obama was elected, no more racism. And I was like, I don't know if that's true, you know. So to see the next election, the way that Trump, you know, when you see him go to different places, and he said, listen, you know, he had people, and we talked about this in that section. Jake Tapper actually talked about it as well. He had people voting against their own interests.
Yes.
Because poor whites did not benefit from Trump policies.
Right. And you know, I saw, you know, one of the things that killed me was I saw Trump signs in trailer park.
Yes. Well,
and I'm sitting here like saying, this is mind-boggling to me.
Yes. But you gave them somebody to say, I'm in my position because of them. And the them was Mexicans. So he said, you know, the Mexicans are coming and taking all your jobs, and we're going to build this wall, and we're going to make Mexico pay for it. And everybody got all excited. They was like, oh yeah, build the wall, build. It's like that's your platform. That's not even feasible. Like, anybody asked the question, how is that even going to be possible? Did Mexico agree to build the wall? Nobody asked any questions. They just kept saying it over and over again, and it worked. So the fact that it worked tells you a lot about where we really are in this country. Wow.
Once again, Police Brutality and White Supremacy, get a copy of the book. We want to open up the floor for audience questions. So I'm going to ask First Lady Ayanna Waleska, those of you who are on the team, if you can sift through and see if we've got any questions that the audience wants to ask, and we'll open up the floor for a couple of them at this time.
Sure, I'm going to go to this one. It's from a state representative, Bud Williams. He says, what is your take on reparations?
I think reparations is not even a take. It's just what should be owed. I mean, when you talk to the Democrats, and this is one of my problems with the party, is that, you know, once you talk about bring up reparations for Black people of what happened in American slavery, then they need to have a whole, you know, fact finding thing, and they need to have a discussion. And they need to have study. I was like, what do you need to study? You know what happened? Like, there's nothing to study, but you don't see them do that for other groups. And right. That's one of the problems with the white liberals. You know, all the time they're saying, okay, well, you know, I mean, you've seen some Democrats just flat out say they didn't support reparations, and I always want to hear the follow-up question of
including the guy in the White House.
Yes, and including him, including Bernie Sanders. I saw Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders was who I wanted to get into the White, but he was the same position as far as reparations. So it's an interesting, and it's not that like it was that long ago. I mean, when you look and I talk to my, grandparents, and they're telling me the stories of when they were growing up, and you're like, wow, that was in your lifetime. So it should not even be an issue.
Okay, thank you. Waleska has a question for you at this time.
Thank you, Sis Ayana. Next question. First is thank you for your words tonight. And the question is, how can we bridge the divide and convert all the races in this country without compromising on our values?
Well, so that's the problem, is because sometimes people want to, and this happens on both sides of the aisle. Let me just be 100% clear. A lot of times you'll have different, and this is my experience, so I'll say that, and white liberals in particular, they'll support you on speaking out against police brutality, support you against, racism, but then they want you to support them on what they want to push for, even if it goes against your morals. And like, well, wait a minute now, I can't support that, but that doesn't mean that you can't support me. You know what I mean? Or if you just say, okay, you have the right to be able to live without harm or persecution or, destruction or, anything like that. But then that's not enough. Can we go a little further? Can you denounce what the Bible says about it? I was like, well, no, I can't denounce what the Bible says. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's, and I'm actually speaking at a function in May talking about that very topic, because it would be great if people could respect the fact that there are some topics that you agree with and some topics you disagree with, but usually that's not what happens. If they feel that if they support you, you're supposed to support them on everything, and I can't compromise my morals.
Yeah. There's a question, and I'm gonna go back to you ladies, but there's a question I see. What do you have to say about the demonizing of the truth by Trump in order to make lies real news?
Well, that's what the enemy does. That all you have to do is just read the Bible, and that's what happens. I mean, the trickery, the switching, and you can say that in every instance. I mean, you talked about Kaepernick before. Kaepernick literally, after he took a knee, he went to the media and said, I am taking a knee specifically for racism, police brutality, and he said that the political process. He said we needed more options. That's why it is. It's not against the veterans. It's not against everything like that. I have family in the military. I have respect for them. It is specifically these three things. And what did Trump immediately do? He said he is against the veterans and attacking it, and he kept saying it over and over again. But the crazy part is, then people started accepting that as the definition of the reason why Kaepernick was taking a knee, even though there was actual footage of Kaepernick explaining why he took a knee.
And not to mention, it was veterans who suggested that he take a knee.
Yes, instead of sitting down. So all of that went out the window. But I'm amazed at how, not just Trump, but the entire Republican Party can repeat something over and over again, and then it's just accepted as truth. You know what I mean? Without any research, without any, anything like that, even though the facts tell you something completely different, they just repeat it and it's just accepted. But then you have to hold the Democrats accountable because they don't fight against that enough. They're not, even if you talk about defund the police, we can't accept their definition of what defund the police means. We know defund doesn't mean abolish. Those are two different words. Mm-hmm. We're going to accept what they say. So then you have Biden on the State of the Union saying, no, we don't want to defund. We want to fund. You're like, Biden, you know that's not what it means. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's a whole nother issue as well.
And you interviewed Mark Lamont Hill and some others on that very topic about defunding the police. And of course, we know that's not at all what it meant. There's another question that says, what do you think an independent or Democrat should do with grievances with the party? grievances with the Democrat Party, because it's, I mean, you know, a lot of Black folks have decided that we can't get down with the Republicans, but they're becoming very disillusioned and disenchanted with the Democrats as well.
And for very good reason. You know, I mean, there's a reason why. But that was going back to what Kaepernick's point was that we need other options. You know, we're too often we're forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. And that's what we had last election. And we weren't excited about Biden. We know his past. We know the things that he was pushing for. We know what he did with the crime bill. We know what he's saying publicly. He just wasn't as bad as Trump. But that's a low barometer for us to have, not as bad as Trump. So no, we definitely need more options. So it's a very frustrating process when you're only given, you know, two bad options. One's just a little bit worse than the other.
All right, ladies, we'll take one, maybe two more.
I had a question on the table. Since we were talking about Kaepernick, one of the things that I saw throughout that process, and I'm not an athlete, you know, and I'm not married to one in that way, but I was very frustrated with so many Black athletes unwilling, you know, to also join in taking a knee and or speaking to social justice. And I guess I just want to know, how did you feel, or how do you feel about that?
I think that a lot of times when you have throughout history, you know, men who are willing to take a stance that are unpopular, they're doing it alone. I mean, you have people that may, you know, start to be able to support you from afar quietly, or wait until things kind of simmer down a little bit, then they jump and support you. But if you look at, like, you know, people always like to reference, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King when they talk about, you know, certain aspects of the struggle, and you look at his approval rating, who was really supporting him in his last days, the Black church wasn't supporting him. Like, he had a low approval rating. If you look at Malcolm X, you know, of where he was, he had left the nation, you know, he was, and he wasn't heavily supported either. So you go throughout history, and you be like Muhammad Ali. You know, mainstream America loves to talk about how much they respect and honor Muhammad Ali now. But my grandfather would always tell me, no, that's not the way they treated him in his heyday when he said he wasn't going to Vietnam. We just celebrated Jackie Robinson, right? We just celebrated Jackie Robinson. He wasn't supported either back in the day. So it's years later that people grow an appreciation. So watch, years later down the road, they're going to be honoring Kaepernick and talking about his bravery and everything like that, the same way they do Muhammad Ali. And I'll be telling my great grandchildren, that's not the way they treated him back in the day. I was there, you know.
I saw something you posted. I think it was Keith Boykin, who put up a quote, and then he put Colin Kaepernick with a question mark,
right?
And he said, no, that wasn't Colin Kaepernick's quote. That was Jackie Robinson's quote, right, about how he could not sing the national anthem. And that was his quote from 75 years ago.
Crazy.
You know, yeah, absolutely crazy. Same thing that Colin Kaepernick is saying today. Yeah. There's a question that asks this: will positions against Democrats discourage voter participation and lead to another Trump presidency? I guess they're asking you to be predictive, but
I think the Democrats are you know, shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak, because, you know, especially with the younger generation, as I'm talking to younger people, they're really frustrated with the entire political process, and I can't say that I blame them. You know, so when you have, it's tough. It's tough, but what I always tell people as well is how important local elections are. Now, local elections are a whole different ballgame, because those are the people who are in charge of putting together, you know, the things that the sheriff, the police chief in your city, the head of the education department. Those are people, like, you have to get involved in that one, maybe even more so than the national you know what I mean, election, because those are the ones that, you know, the way that money is allocated or misallocated, or, you know, that's all locally. But no, I understand the frustration. I share it as well.
I want to thank you, man, for coming here tonight and sharing your time. And I want to thank you for writing the book. I love it. A lot of good, insightful viewpoints and information from a lot of good people who are actively fighting the fight for justice, through various venues across the nation. And I'll plug it once again for those of you who are watching and who are with us on tonight: Police Brutality and White Supremacy, The Fight Against American Traditions by Etan Thomas. You need to get your copy of that anywhere where books are sold. It is during this time we normally would give an award to some unsung hero in our community, liking to highlight those who are doing great things, who don't necessarily get the recognition, of people with a higher profile. But tonight, the committee decided that we would take this time and we would honor the legacy and the memory of some of those that we have lost recently. And there are 4 individuals in particular that we have lost in our community that we want to celebrate their lives and their legacy. I'm going to ask if Brendan will put that graphic up so we can see these particular, not the video yet, the graphic, the individuals that we are going to highlight and celebrate on tonight. Philip Tony Malone, Sophia Jeffrey, Ron Johnson, and Raymond Jordan. Tony Malone was born here in Springfield, a native, lifelong resident, attended Springfield schools, graduated from the High School of Commerce. I think he and I graduated at the same time. I graduated from classical, he graduated from commerce. He was a longtime employee, a program director at the Boys and Girls Club Family Center on Acorn Street, a member of Third Baptist Church. He was a referee for city basketball games and tournaments, transportation driver for young people and adults. He loved basketball, football, billiards, ping pong, bumper pool. You can go to the club and play any of those games with Tony. He was a staple in the family center community, really influencing generations of young people and families that were positively impacted and influenced by him. He was a former Keystone Club president, and as a leader at the Boys and Girls Club, he encouraged and mentored youth and young adults, and he embraced the club's mission to enable young people, especially those who need them the most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, and responsible citizens. And so tonight we honor the legacy of Philip Tony Malone. First Lady is going to talk about Sophie Jeffrey.
Thank you, Bishop, and the Lift Every Voice family for this opportunity to share on a life well lived by Mama Sophie, as I called her. Sophia E. Slocum Jeffrey of Springfield, Massachusetts, was called home to be with the Lord on her birthday, December 29th, 2021, at the age of 78. She was born in Greenville, South Carolina, moved to Springfield, Massachusetts at the ripe age of 8. Sophia was a graduate of the High School of Commerce and attended Howard University in Washington, D.C., and the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Miss Sophie had a lengthy and distinguished career with the Early Childhood Center of Greater Springfield. That's where I got to know her, as she played a vital role in helping many of our children and our families navigate successfully through the early childhood system. She eventually retired from the center as the Director of Social Services and Health. Miss Sophie dedicated her life to community advocacy, volunteerism, and local and national political activism. Over the past 45 years, Miss Sophie has been recognized and awarded several distinguished honors, which included 1,000 Points of Light Award from President George Bush and the Eyes on the Prize Award, among many, many, many others. Also, on September 15, 2011, was named Sophia E. Jeffrey Day to celebrate her many accomplishments in the community. Miss Sophie was also a loyal and dedicated member and treasurer at the Christian Faith Baptist Church. Miss Sophie, as we all know, was a very modest and private person who was motivated by her passion for her community. She did not seek awards and recognition and often told her friends that she would rather not receive such public acknowledgement. Miss Sophie was very active on boards and committees, both locally and nationally. She was one of the founding members of the Springfield Neighborhood Housing Services and was the president of the board of directors for many years. In addition to this, Miss Sophie held numerous positions during her tenure as a community activist. It was so many that was named in her obituary and so many more that was left out of her obituary. Extremely impressive work and legacy that Miss Sophie leaves behind. I don't know how she did so much, but Miss Sophie had no excuses. She was an example of how to get things done. I will always cherish our short, sweet, and encouraging talks. Her life has not only taught so many of us what to do, she showed most of us how to live. She is legacy exemplified. She is sadly missed by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, family members, friends, and community. But the community she loved so dear will never forget her kindness, her generosity, her loyalty, and her consistency in the pursuit of justice for all. So tonight we want to say rest in power, our dear sweet Miss Sophie.
Thank you, First Lady. Waleska is going to give some remarks about our dear brother, Ron Johnson.
Thank you, Bishop Swan, and thank you for this remembrance ceremony today for our 4 honorees. Ron Johnson served as president of the Martin Luther King Jr. Family Services, and he will be remembered as the keeper of the dream for our community. Ron found his calling at the MLK Family Services that helped him be at the forefront of racial and social justice action. He was known for inspiring his community into resisting inequities, and he was combining all his resources to address systemic issues, expand public health access, and help teach institutions how to invest in people. He grew the Martin Luther King Jr. Family Services to help serve over 750 people each week with after-school programs, college courses, food pantry services, family support, public health outreach, advocated for anti-gang violence prevention, advocated for sports programs, arts, and cultural events. Ron was a leader and a role model for so many. I'm honored to have the blessing of Donna, the Johnson family, and Lift Every Voice planning team to share who Ron was with the world. Ron showed me how to carry the work of community healing. Ron lived purposely and intentionally. Ron's legacy of service will live on through the MLK Family Services in 3 significant yearly events: the Brianna Fund, the annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration, and the Social Justice Awards, honoring community champions who live in service. Ron's legacy will continue to celebrate Dr. King's dream of hope, equity, and unity for all. Our hearts heal with all of the families of Tony Malone, Raymond Jordan, Sophia, Jeffrey, and Ron Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Waleska. And Ayanna Crawford is going to give some remarks about the late State Representative Raymond Jordan.
Thank you so much, Bishop. And so at this time, I'm going to share some remarks about the legacy of Mr. Raymond Jordan. Raymond Jordan was a lifelong resident here in the city of Springfield. He's a product of the Springfield Public Schools. He was a graduate of Springfield Technical High School, a school that maintained a special place in Mr. Jordan's heart throughout his life. He earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and a master's degree from Harvard University Kennedy School of Government. In addition to those degrees, Jordan was conferred honorary degrees by American International College, Springfield College, and Westfield State University. Jordan's dedication for justice and civil rights stood out, eventually earned him the name Barracuda, a name he would live up throughout his career. From 1975 to 1994, Jordan served in the legislature as a state representative of the 11th Hampton District. During his tenure, he chaired the formidable Ways and Means Committee and the Committee on Housing and Urban Development. In 1994, President William Jefferson Clinton selected Jordan to serve as a New England state's liaison for faith-based for community initiatives for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Jordan held the position until his retirement in 2012, and those of us that know him, he never retired. Jordan's service continued long after his retirement. However, for many years, Jordan served as a vice chair of the Massachusetts Democratic Party, coming into the distinction of the longest serving vice chairman. He was made vice chairman emeritus in 2019. Named a superdelegate, Jordan was granted freedom by the MDP to support any presidential candidate nomination at the party's national convention, a privilege and responsibility he took great pride in and care. Jordan made history throughout his political career. He had the distinct honor of becoming the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' first Black state representative and was the first African-American to serve as president of the Electoral College in Massachusetts. In that role, Jordan presided over the casting of Massachusetts votes for the president-elect Barack Obama. His achievements in high road politics, however, cannot be overshadowed by the impact Jordan's work had on the community in which he lived. In 1992, Jordan founded the 5A football, a program that touched scores of youth, ultimately resulting in college football scholarships for many of them. In 1968, he was a co-founder of the Harambe Holiday Incorporated, an annual cultural festival drawing crowds of thousands to the community center. In 2011, he founded the Brethren Community Foundation, an organization designed to support education and literacy programs for low-income youth, as well as health and welfare of seniors. In 2021, he was named President Emeritus of the Brethren Community Foundation. 4 years ago, the city of Springfield built and opened the Raymond A. Jordan Senior Center, an honor that cemented Jordan's more than 50 years of community service and activism, especially in the interests of seniors. A man of faith, Jordan was a lifelong member and trustee of the Alden Baptist Church. He was also a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, the Masonic Temple Summer No. 5. As much as he fought for others, Jordan fought for himself and his family, always putting family first and instilling the values of social justice and advancement. And I would like to take this time to thank the beautiful daughter of Mr. Raymond Jordan, Denise Jordan, for allowing us to share a few remarks about her beautiful, amazing father. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayanna. Thank you, Waleska. Thank you, First Lady, for your remarks on these four iconic individuals.
Denise is about to speak.
In our community.
Yes. And some words from Denise Jordan at this time.
Thank you so much, Ayanna. I really appreciate you almost eulogized my dad all over again. To Bishop Swan, the Lift Every Voice Committee, I'd like to thank you so much for really putting this tribute together to all of these pillars in our community. Tony Malone, that was my friend. We fought like cats and dogs, but I loved him. I just spoke at his memorial last Saturday. Sophie Jeffries, what can I say? Sophie is a part of our family. Folks that know us, Sophie has been my father's friend since kindergarten. And then they were in third grade together, and they've been riding and rolling ever since. And they're still organizing and planning in heaven. You know, during Sophie's last couple of days, I could see it. My father just really could not function because that was his partner in crime, and they did everything together. So I find comfort in the fact that they're still together after all the years when they started out at Brookings Elementary School. Ron Johnson and I, we've been on so many committees together. We had the distinct honor of chairing the very first Resurrection Sunday that was held down at Symphony Hall, public service for over about 2,000 people, kind of renamed Easter to Resurrection Sunday in the city of Springfield. And so just to have my dad honored alongside all those folks and to know all of them personally, I am truly humbled. As has been said, my dad lived and died for the city of Springfield and his community, was still on the phone in the hospital, still trying to wheel and deal for people because that's just who he was. My father was a public servant. He passed on the DNA to serve to his children. I am so proud of him and his legacy. As the young people say, Ray Jordan has receipts, and may his work speak for him because it has. So his legacy is cemented in the city of Springfield, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and on national stages. This is just a great evening, and thank you for the invitation. It was worth me kind of getting rid of another meeting. And to my classmate, the beautiful Lady Swan, it's so good to see you. So I just want to thank everyone just for honoring all the folks that you honored tonight. You know, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, people that serve the community, like the 4 people that you just honored, people need to look to them for guidance and inspiration. If we have more people that serve for the love of the community and not the love of self, our community wouldn't have any problems. So thank you all tonight. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Denise, and thanks to each of you. And we're going to take 60 seconds to honor these iconic individuals in our community. Brendan's going to play a short video, and then I'll come back with final remarks.
Don't think of them as gone away. Their journey's just begun. Life holds so many facets. This earth is only one. Just think of them as resting from the sorrows and the tears in a place of warmth and comfort where there are no days and years. Think how they must be wishing that we could know today how nothing but our sadness can really pass away. And think of them as living in the hearts of those they touched, for nothing loved is ever lost, and they were loved so much.
And even as we love them, let's continue to love one another. Thank you all for being with us this season. We're looking forward to year 13 come next year. I want to thank Etan Thomas once again, our dynamic presenter on tonight. Get his book. I want to thank Vanessa Ford, Youthful Expressions, Crystal Center Brown, for everyone who participated on this evening. And I want to thank each and every one of you who tuned in, wherever you tuned in from, for being with us on this evening. May God bless you and continue to smile upon you is our prayer. Have a great evening.